Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Sad Yugao falls in love with Naruto after Hayate's death during the Chunin exams? Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Hatake Kakashi considered himself the elite. Graduating at an early age, it didn't take long enough until he was promoted to Chunin, Junin and then straight to Anbu. When the Sandaime lined him for taking a genin team, he didn't like it one bit. It got worse since all the teams who were lined with him ended up failing from lack of teamwork. When Team 7 was given to him, at first he thought it would be just like all the prior teams. However, when Sasuke offered food to Sakura, he actually considered this team to be the only one who got the idea of teamwork. Clearly, he didn't expect to carry one of his students on his arms after a Chidori wound on his chest from another one of his students. Channeling chakra to his feet, he needed to get back to Konoha as fast as possible, otherwise Naruto's life would be over. On the way, Kakashi cursed Uchiha Sasuke for what he did both against the village and against Naruto, attempting to kill him with a Chidori on his chest. Most of all, he was cursing himself for two reasons. First of all, he cursed his blind trust in Sasuke, and second, he cursed himself for teaching his technique to someone who would use it on his best friend. After a while, the gates approached and in seconds Kakashi passed by it. He couldn't afford to wait since he needed Tsunade or Shizune right away. In 10 seconds, he barged in Tsunade's office with a bloody Naruto on his hands. At first, the Hokage objected as to the reason of the intrusion, however upon seeing whose body was on Kakashi's arms, the doctor in her sprung into action and within minutes, Naruto was in a hospital bed, getting all patched up and receiving some chakra incision in order for his wounds to heal faster. The next day, all members of the retrieval mission returned home, although some of them almost didn't make it. Akamichi Choji was suffering from the effects of his family's chakra pills. Hyuga Neji came with a giant hole inches away from a fatal wound. The rest of the group sustained minor injuries and was already cleared from the hospital. The leader of the mission and only Chunin of the group, Nara Shikamaru, was wondering about his first leading mission and how much of a failure it was. Truth be told, no one could blame him, seeing that his team was up against Junin-level shinobi and somehow survived the assault. Also, they would be able to get Sasuke back, had one Kagaya Kimimaro not stepped in to aid the enemy. However, Shikamaru, even after both Tsunade and his father encouraged him to grow as a shinobi, still blamed himself for almost getting 2 or 3 of his friends killed. That doesn't mean that the Nara heir would ever give up the path he chosen. Not because it would be so damn troublesome as he put it, but as his dad put it, not every mission goes according to plan and that the failures exists to show what needs to be changed or improved. Shikamaru, use this failed opportunity to improve your abilities as both a shinobi and a leader. Use this mission to be better prepared for the future so that mistakes like this can no longer occur, said Shikaku at the time, and Shikamaru acknowledged these words to heart. He would get stronger and he would improve his abilities. Man, this is troublesome, but I'll ask Asuma-sensei to help me with training, thought Shikamaru as he went home to rest after what seemed to be the longest mission of his life so far. However, while Shikamaru found the answer to his questions, there was one specific blonde who was lying on the hospital bed, not wanting to see anyone right now. He just looked outside as the sun was about to leave Konoha for the day and let the moon do its job. One would find it strange to see a usually hyperactive boy choosing, instead, to look at the window in pure reflection of the current events that occurred. However, one single event still didn't let his mind be. If it wasn't for the damn fox, Sasuke's Chidori would have killed him by either piercing a lung or the immense amount of blood loss. Naruto wondered if truly, Sasuke was being controlled by Orochimaru as he as well as everyone presumed. Nonetheless, only Naruto himself could vow for who was in control of the Uchiha's body at the moment, simply because he was the one who fought him. For the first time since he met Sasuke, Naruto was in doubt over Sasuke's behavior. Of course, he knew Sasuke was a brooding bastard, but never did he think Sasuke would pierce his lungs so ruthlessly before. These events made Naruto realize that maybe he was the only one being delusional as to believe that Sasuke wouldn't be capable of something like this. Right before the Chidori attack, Sasuke did admit that Naruto was his best friend. However, after the attack, the blonde questioned himself as to the Uchiha really understanding what meant the expression, best friend. Killing someone they consider a friend, it would be safe to say the person was mad, but to kill a best friend, it would be like saying the man didn't have blood running through his veins. He remembered how much the others suffered as well trying to bring Sasuke back, and it sickened him to realize that had Sasuke not left, none of his real friends would be injured in the first place. For the first time since he met the Uchiha, Naruto became skeptical over his friendship with Uchiha Sasuke. What if Sasuke was always like this and the cursed seal was just the push needed for him? If such a thing was true, then why did I ever bother? Why did I even bother to see if I surpassed him or not? Those were the thoughts that now occupied Naruto's mind up to the point of him going through every experience that he had inside his mind and wondered why he focused only on beating the traitor than trying to improve the areas he lacked. Naruto immediately felt like he played the part of an idiot all this time. He was remembering every single screw-up he ever committed and how delusional he was for thinking that with just Kage Bunshin and an incomplete Rasengan, he would be able to grow as a shinobi. He now acknowledged that everything he ever thought about, everything he ever holds on to wasn't what it should be. Not focusing enough at the academy, not focusing enough to learn the basics before attempt the harder techniques. In fact, he remembered only passing the academy because he was able to do a technique that didn't even require a lot of knowledge to begin with. The Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, shadow clone technique, did only require one hand seal and lot of chakra to waste. The only thing he needed for this technique was to be able to mold chakra, and that he learned just after he entered the academy. Now grinding his teeth in agony upon not applying himself when needed in the past, Naruto cursed his very existence and also his lack to concentrate on his goal. This was the scene that a certain silver-haired Chunin saw upon opening the door. Kakashi knew Naruto didn't want to see anyone and he was worried for his student. Usually, Naruto wouldn't behave like this, and truth be told, Kakashi was a little frightened that this event ended up closing Naruto's heart for good. He understood that Sasuke meant to Naruto just as Uchiha Obito meant to him, and if Obito ended up wanting to kill him, Kakashi would be desolated right now. Naruto, upon acknowledging his sensei's presence, kept staring at him with a disapproving glare since he thought he told everyone that he didn't want to see anyone right now. "Can I help you, sensei?" asked Naruto with a tone that showed Kakashi that his presence was unwanted right now. Kakashi for his part awoke from his wonderings and turned to study Naruto's strangely dark blue eyes right now. Usually, Naruto's eyes displayed a bright ocean blue that could be quite enticing, however now the Naruto in front of him wasn't the real Naruto. "Well, can't a sensei come to visit his student? I happen to know that you didn't want to see anyone right now, but I just wanted to talk for a second," said Kakashi as he picked up a chair on the far corner and placed it so that he could seat right in front of Naruto. The blonde for his part eyed Kakashi's movements and wondered what the hell Kakashi wanted to talk to him in the first place. Naruto assumed that Kakashi would try explaining a different version of the situation, maybe try running some damage control on it, but he allowed Kakashi to begin the conversation, to which the silver-haired Chunin nodded and turned to state. "Listen, Naruto, I'm here to talk to you in regards of what you're feeling right now towards your teammate," asked Kakashi, but the look that Naruto returned to him was something he never thought he would see. Naruto's eyebrows were slightly lifted, as in Kakashi just said something curious to the blonde. Naruto was also smiling as well, but it was not even remotely close to one of his goofy smiles that everyone grew accustomed to. It was an ironic smile, particularly used when someone uses sarcasm to answer a question. "Explain the word teammate," For me, Kakashi-sensei. I may not have much experience with this kind of thing, but I know that teammates don't try to kill their teammates with a chidori on the chest. It was ironic, though, that just moments before he did this, he considered me as his best friend. If he did this to his best friend, I don't want to know what he does to his enemies, retorted Naruto, as in Kakashi just committed the biggest mistake of all times. However, he knew he was right, and also Kakashi knew he was right. After hearing the response, Kakashi wasn't surprised, nor was he shocked to hear Naruto speaking like this. Nonetheless, Kakashi's reason for visiting wasn't only related to how Naruto was doing, but also to hear the blonde's report on their fight. When questioned, Naruto told him everything that occurred after he left Rock Lee to fight the Kagaya person. After Kakashi lifted himself from the chair, he wished nice recovery to Naruto and went for the door, before being stopped by the blonde. Kakashi-sensei, I want to ask you something, said Naruto, to which Kakashi nodded and turned to stare the blonde, who by now was remembering what he was thinking just before his sensei entered the room. Do you believe in the word regret? Asked Naruto, earning a suspicious look from Kakashi, who clearly didn't see this coming, especially one coming from Uzumaki Naruto, the boy who always screamed his never giving up slogan. After he returned to seating at the chair he once was, Naruto continued. Tell me something, Kakashi-sensei, and be honest about it. On your point of view, how I stand in terms of shinobi abilities? Asked Naruto once again, now showing Kakashi what was this all about. Turning to think for a bit, at first he wondered why Naruto was asking said question, but thought about it either way. On a rational point of view, Kakashi didn't believe Naruto to have what it takes to become a ninja. Even though he was, indeed, a chakra house, his chakra control wasn't near as good as an average genin. His speed skills were mediocre at best, and his taijutsu as close to street fight as possible. However, he knew that once Naruto fixated his mind on something, he was certain Naruto would manage to finish no matter what. When he looked at Naruto's eyes, he knew Naruto was waiting for a straight answer here, so he gave his point of view. If you want an honest opinion about it, you have a long way in front of you if improvement is what you seek. Your chakra control isn't appropriate and your fighting skills are close to a street fight. Above all things, a genin level shinobi has to have at least the academy level taijutsu and above water walking level of chakra control. Your ninjutsu could use some work, but this area is the least of your concern, stated Kakashi before he looked to Naruto, waiting for him to explode and demand him to take everything back, but surprisingly he didn't. Naruto just stood there staring at Kakashi for a moment, before smiling and nodding in appreciation. I appreciate the honest answer, Kakashi-sensei, and I was wondering if you could help me with something. I can't leave here for another 2 days, so might as well get to training. Would you mind picking some books that will help me understand some concepts better? Asked Naruto, to which Kakashi looked at him as in Naruto grew another head. Naruto wanting to read books was really something he didn't expect. Nonetheless, Kakashi just nodded in affirmative and asked what he needed. Thanks, well, I was wondering if the library had any scrolls on After Academy Taijutsu and Chakra Control. Also, I'm sure there is a book on ninjutsu I could learn apart from the 2 I already know, stated Naruto, to which Kakashi nodded and said he would see what he could find and then return soon. A few hours later, after giving Naruto some books about some forms of taijutsu, chakra control and D-to-C ranked ninjutsu techniques, Kakashi was in front of Tsunade explaining Naruto's fight to her and also expressing his concerns about the blonde. Tsunade was impressed about hearing Naruto applying himself in studies and told Kakashi of what Jiraiya wants to do with Naruto, once he received clearance from the hospital. Kakashi, Jiraiya is going to take Naruto with him for a 2.5 years training trip. He plans to teach Naruto better deals with the Kyuubi's chakra as well as focus on some points the blonde lacked in his shinobi education. Now considering that Naruto is already studying to correct his flaws, maybe Jiraiya can initiate him on more advanced forms of ninpu, ninja arts. Now, You're saying that Naruto is now skeptical towards Sasuke, said Tsunade, with the late statement sounding like a question. Yes, Tsunade-sama. According to him, someone who tries to kill him doesn't deserve to be called teammate. It was clear in his eyes how much hate and anger he is feeling right now. I can only worry about his path now, that whatever innocence yet left in him, now it was completely shattered by Sasuke's doing, said Kakashi, still looking down like he was considering the event to be somehow his fault. Looking at Naruto losing his innocence was enough to shatter whatever confidence Kakashi had in himself both as a shinobi and as a teacher. Also, when Kakashi laid out Naruto's flaws, Kakashi knew that he should be the one correcting it, since Naruto was his student after all. Also, he expected Naruto to shout about not receiving fair treatment, but instead all the blonde did was appreciate his honest answer and ask for some books so that he could improve the areas he lacked at the moment. To Kakashi, it felt like Naruto didn't need him for much. It went without saying, though, that his pain was visible and Tsunade caught it easily. What are you thinking, Kakashi? What is it on your mind right now? Asked Tsunade, a little worried about seeing Kakashi's dejected face looking down the floor as in he was the one to blame for this whole situation ever occurring. Tsunade was surprised to see Naruto asking for some books and wondering why he didn't come for Kakashi for help. It couldn't be that Naruto didn't consider Kakashi to teach him what he needs to know, however if that was the truth, then something happened to lead him to think about this. Lifting his head to look at the Hokage in the eye, he answered with all honesty possible. Seeing Naruto asking for books to help him improve, made me realize where I made a mistake. Out of pointing out Naruto's mistakes, not one time I set myself to correct them. Not even when he managed to succeed in passing to the last phase of the Chunin exams, did I try to improve his abilities. Instead, I focused on Sasuke and placed Naruto under the hands of Ebisu, before Jiraiya came up and taught him some stuff. Naruto must believe that he wouldn't get any help from me, so he chose to train by himself. I guess I'm not a competent teacher as I led myself to believe, said Kakashi, to which Tsunade sighed, but she had already figured something like this happened. Speaking of Naruto as a subject, she could easily find a number of things that needed correction. However, Kakashi ended up neglecting the boy training and that cost him dearly, had the Kyuubi's chakra not helped Naruto. Kakashi, I understand how you feel, but bear in mind that not everything is lost. Naruto will receive the training he needs from Jiraiya and I'm sure he'll come back an entirely different shinobi. I just hope that he doesn't come back a different human being, though, but that's something to worry for later. Also, since I nominated Sakura as my apprentice, I'm afraid Team 7 is adjourned until Naruto comes back from his training trip. Now, the village is soon to recover its financial support it once had and more missions requests are coming. I'm placing you on some of them. Present here tomorrow at 10 for debriefing and I consider that you're not late this time, if you know what's right for you, said Tsunade, more like threatening Kakashi, to which said man swallowed hard and left the place. With Naruto. After Kakashi brought him the books, Naruto didn't waste time and took the taijutsu book. He initially thought about using Kage Bunshin all the time to do the fighting, however using said technique ended up misdirecting his concentration to the point of his attacks being pitiful to watch. As Naruto went through some advanced forms of taijutsu, he was remembering some aspects of the academy taijutsu style, which was good since he could practice now when he leaves the hospital. Defensive positions, offensive positions, Naruto was recollecting everything he saw at the academy and he was remembering that he didn't use it once during his missions. It was already late at night, but the blonde didn't want to sleep right now. He's been lying down for enough time to condemn sleeping, so he instead focused on studying and improving his knowledge. He considered sleeping later, since he wouldn't be able to leave the premises anyway, so he continued reading through several taijutsu katas, which consisted of attack and defensive forms of the fighting style. It didn't take long to finish the book, since it contained a number of images to explain the positions rather than an actual text. Moving on, He took the chakra control book and was surprised to see that water walking and tree walking are just genin level chakra control. According to the book, the next level would be suspending a kunai on top of the ninja's hand using chakra to sustain the object in the air. Naruto learned that in order to attain this level of chakra control, he had to constantly exhale a thin layer of chakra off his hand in order to keep the kunai suspended. He also learned that this exercise is extremely complex to do, simply because just like all kinds of chakra control exercises, using too much chakra will send the kunai flying and too little, the kunai wouldn't even leave the ninja's hand. He kept reading the book on chakra control all night and didn't even bother to look when the first ray of sunlight entered his room. He was few pages from finishing the book and his brain was already filled with valuable information both on taijutsu katas and advanced chakra control exercises. Minutes after, he closed the book and looked outside for a while. So many information being hidden and he didn't even bother thinking about reading this earlier. There was only one book left to read, but this one he could wait a little bit. His head was already hurting from reading 2 books all night and he guessed a little rest was a must. Before, though, he turned to look outside one more time and managed to see a couple of ninjas jumping through rooftops in speeds he never seen before. They must be channeling chakra through their legs to accelerate their movements. I guess I could do that as well. That would improve my chakra control as well, thought Naruto as he closed his eyes and slept instantly. Little did he know, though, that a Toad Sennin was observing him all the time, since he arrived in town. Jiraiya heard from Tsunade and Kakashi that Naruto chose to study ways to improve some of his flaws and he couldn't help but be surprised about seeing Naruto reading not only a book, but 2 books all night. Jiraiya considered focusing more on controlling Kyuubi's chakra, however seeing the level of focus that the boy attained, he guessed that making him stronger would be better. A stronger body had a stronger spirit and a stronger spirit wouldn't be subjected to being controlled by anyone. This Naruto is a wild card, isn't it? Asked Jiraiya presumably to no one at all, until Kakashi's figure appeared hiding in the shadows, nodding. I guess his last fight showed a lot to him and now he's correcting his flaws. Those books I gave him actually contained Chunin level material. I guess this way I can make up for the lost time with him, said Kakashi while reading his all-favorite book, earning a smile from the pervert Sanin who in turn, acknowledged Kakashi's feeling of guilt until Kakashi once again manifested. Now that you're taking him with you, I believe he will improve a lot more than with me. After all, you were the one who taught him the Rasengan, water walking and Kuchio's summoning technique, where I, on the other hand, taught him only tree walking, said Kakashi to which Jiraiya nodded. Don't be this way, Kakashi. Regret is not a word ninjas should rely on. Also Naruto is now on his way to become a fine shinobi, which was quite surprising to me at least, since when I first saw him, the brat was impulsive and annoying. I wonder if I should begin elemental training with him during the trip. Wonder what element is his chakra aligned with? Asked Jiraiya mostly to himself, but Kakashi couldn't help but smile, since he would know this information in a while. Looking to the room once again, Jiraiya saw Shizune entering and checking on Naruto's condition before writing on his file and leave the room. One thing that worried Jiraiya was that Naruto didn't have visitors, but then he remembered someone saying that Naruto wished to be left alone, so he didn't bother. However, just as he was about to turn and leave, he saw someone entering the room and it turned out to be a few of his comrades, namely Sakura, Ino, Neji, Kiba, Shikamaru and Choji. After sneaking in, the group turned to watch the sleepy Naruto and a few noticed the books next to his bed. Sakura wondered why Naruto wanted to be left alone just like everyone else did. She eventually went to check the books and was surprised to see Naruto reading for the first time. The group considered waking him up to talk to him, however it seemed that all of them chose to just look at him and wonder how could someone so hyperactive could sleep so peacefully like that. The sunlight didn't bother the blonde at all and the light brightened his hair up to the point of showing a different image of Naruto to those who knew him. He seems different, somehow, said Ino, standing next to Shikamaru and Choji, getting nods from everyone present, except for Sakura, who in turn kept looking at him. Sakura wanted to hear confident words coming from the blonde, words like, "Next time they will be able to bring Sasuke back," or, "I won't rest until we bring him back." With Sasuke gone, Naruto was now her only source for strength. She wanted Naruto to tell her about Sasuke's behavior, since the report on the mission was considered confidential to genin ears, apart from those who participated in the mission. I really wished to know more about what happened out there, though. Rumors had it that Naruto returned deeply hurt from the fight, but Sasuke wouldn't do such a thing to Naruto. "They are teammates and friends," said Sakura, more like asking all those present for confirmation, but neither of them shared the same opinion. Neji, for instance, chose to reply against Sakura's comment, since he used to be like the Uchiha in some way. "Sakura-san, I don't concur with your assessment over the Uchiha. It was because of him, we all came back with near-fatal wounds. Also, Naruto fought with the Uchiha, so it's only logical to assume that the injury was caused by him. Sasuke is in darkness right now and such a feat wouldn't be far from his kind of behavior. I happen to know that since until I fought against Naruto, I used to be like this as well. Naruto rescued me from the darkness, but he couldn't do the same thing for Sasuke," stated Neji, to which Sakura looked at the stoic Hyuga, but couldn't counter his argument. She knew how cold Sasuke became after the incident with Orochimaru. "I don't mean to hurt you, Sakura, but Sasuke's actions were appalling and constitute treason to our village. Maybe you should consider moving on and focus more on your training together with Tsunade-sama," said Ino, expecting to be contradicted by the pink-haired genin, but instead Sakura just kept looking at Naruto and wondering what was in his mind right now. Was that the answer now, giving up? Truth be told, Sasuke never bothered asking for help or anything, so why was she so persistent on bringing him back? She didn't know whether or not Naruto gave up on bringing him back. "I don't know, Ino, I just don't know what to do. He always was distant to all of us, but as a team, we managed to form a little bond between us. I will let the choice fall on Naruto. If he decides to go after him, then I'll go with him, however if he decides to give up, then our bond is broken and things will never be the same as it once was. I think I'm going home now, guys. I don't have the strength to hear what Naruto has to say yet," said Sakura before moving towards the door. However, as she reached for the doorknob, a certain grumbling startled her and she turned to see Naruto just waking up and looking at the ones present. "Hey, how long have you been here and why didn't you wake me up?" asked Naruto, eyeing everyone and waiting for a response. It was Shikamaru who explained that since he was sleeping, they didn't want to wake you up and how troublesome would be to do such a thing. Needless to say, Naruto dismissed the issue since it was pointless to comment further. "So, how is everyone?" asked Naruto, though now the difference was plainly visible to all of them. Naruto's once crystal blue eyes now were like dark blue eyes, and where he always smiled, now his face was akin to a bothered person. The group exchanged a few monologues like, "I'm fine," and, "Alright," to which Naruto nodded and stretched a little bit. Sakura's ear was pounding like crazy since she now would know about what happened with Sasuke and Naruto. However, she hesitated to come forward with the question, and that was pretty much visible. She secretly appreciated when Ino asked Naruto as to why he didn't want to see anyone right now. After hearing the question, Naruto explained his epiphany to everyone and also explained the book he was reading all night. Along the explanation, the group was stunned and now wondered what triggered him to think like this. When he was about to explain what happened, Shikamaru stopped him, saying that the details of said mission was considered restricted to genin ninja apart from those who participated in the mission, to which Naruto acknowledged and stopped talking. Naruto heard about Sakura being apprenticed to Tsunade and congratulated her. However, everyone saw how Naruto addressed Sakura and all of them wondered where went that crush of the blonde. Sakura, of course, was the first to notice, and that came somehow as a higher shock than Sasuke deserting the village. Sakura oftentimes found Naruto to be annoying, asking to go out with her, but when he stopped doing it, she now missed it. Well, since Sakura will be training with Tsunade, I guess I'm on my own, then. Someone of Kakashi-sensei's caliber won't be held up to teach one single genin. No matter, though, these books taught me a lot and I can't wait to leave this place and begin training, said Naruto, taking his 3 books and laying them on top of his bed. The group, though, wondered about Naruto's training, since all of them concurred with him about Kakashi. Little did the group know that said person heard it all and sighed before turning to Jiraiya. Quite humble of him, wouldn't you say, Kakashi? Quit worrying about it. When I'm through with him, he'll be 10 times stronger, trust me on this, said Jiraiya, to which Kakashi nodded and left. After seeing Kakashi leaving, Jiraiya turned to look at Naruto and wondered about a few things. I'm glad Naruto isn't fixed on rescuing the Uchiha boy. This way, his growth won't be hindered by simply overcoming the Uchiha. I guess my sensei days are up once again. Back to Naruto's room, silence ruled the place. Sakura managed to ask Naruto of his intentions towards Uchiha Sasuke, and he eyed Sakura with what seemed to be a sarcastic smile. Naruto thought quite a lot, but he acknowledged the fact that he didn't think of Sasuke at all, other than the fact that the Uchiha tried to kill him. Oh, he didn't need to think about it, since the answer was already clear in his mind. However, because of the secrecy towards the mission, he had to hide some aspects of what happened and focus more on Sasuke's reasons. Sakura, in my opinion, you can't bring back someone who doesn't want to return. Sasuke left because he thought it would be better for him than staying in the village. Any missions towards rescuing him would turn to failure simply because he doesn't want to return, nor do I wish to go after him. Some aspects of the mission led me to believe that Sasuke was a loose cannon just waiting for a little push. So, I don't intend to go after him anytime soon, unless the Hokage orders me to do so, explained Naruto before seeing Sakura lowering her head to looking towards the ground and left the room. She didn't expect Naruto's explanation to be so unnervingly accurate, and she found no counter-argument for him. The rest of the group wished him a good recovery and all of them left. After that, Naruto picked up his last book about ninjutsu and turned to read it. Inside, Naruto saw the 3 academy jutsus and even some advanced ones to use, like Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu, and Bunshin Daibakua Clone Explosion Jutsu. Also, he saw a technique called Gyorai Shin no Jutsu, Torpedo Needle Jutsu, and read about the technique. So far, all of these techniques were relatively easy to do, since the first 2 required a technique similar to the Kage Bunshin, and the last one Naruto just had to mold chakra correctly through a correct set of hand seals. However, the next ones were purely elemental jutsus, and Naruto wouldn't be able to do since he didn't know how. Seeing the rest of the book was divided into elements, Naruto sighed and closed his book. He was going to leave it at the table in front of him when 2 papers fell on his lap. Lifting an eyebrow, Naruto picked them and saw that someone sent him a message. Naruto, I see you noticed that apart from some jutsus, this book contains mostly elemental jutsus. So, the next paper is a special one. This paper is what we use to determine a ninja's element. Every shinobi has a link towards a certain element, which means that he or she will be able to perform jutsus towards that element easier than others. As you know or don't know, there are 5 elements: fire, lightning, wind, earth and water. Therefore, by channeling chakra to this paper, you'll be able to find which element you are best suited with. After channeling chakra to the paper will either get soaked water, burn, fire, turns to dust, earth, crumbled, lightning, or split in half, wind. Kakashi. After reading it, Naruto turned to look at the paper and studied for a second. After a moment, he shrugged it off and did just like Kakashi's explanation said. He channeled chakra for a while, before he saw the paper splitting in half, indicating that he contained a wind affinity. Wind, huh, it's very rare to have such an affinity Naruto, said Kakashi, earning the blonde's attention only to see that not only Kakashi was there as well, but also Jiraiya. What do you mean by saying rare, Kakashi-sensei? Asked Naruto, to which Jiraiya chose to fill in for him. Since we're in fire country, that means the majority of our shinobis possess a fire affinity, which is quite opposite to wind. Other affinities, although less common than fire, are also in abundance in Konoha, like earth and water, with lightning being second last and wind being last, said Jiraiya, to which Kakashi nodded as well as Naruto. So that means any knowledge towards wind is limited in Konoha, said Naruto, gaining nods from Kakashi and Jiraiya. Truth be told, he didn't need much to work with anyway. His book explained about food and chakra control exercises, so the techniques he could learn from someone with knowledge in the area. Lifting his head once again to face his senseis, he wondered why Jiraiya was there and not focusing on his research as he often did. Upon voicing it, Jiraiya snorted at the blonde for his comment, but explained about the training trip. Needless to say, Naruto was surprised upon seeing that he would leave the village for that long, but he wondered why he needed to get out of the village, to which Jiraiya explained that aside from training, Jiraiya would be protecting him from the Akatsuki, thus satisfying the blonde's curiosity. Truth be told, Naruto wanted nothing more than train to correct his flaws, and training under Jiraiya would enable him time to correct them and also learn a lot. Jiraiya explained that they would leave as soon as he was cleared from the hospital, to which Naruto acknowledged it and appreciated the opportunity to train. After the Chunin and Sannin left the room, Naruto picked up his book and turned to look at the Fudan section and how to manifest Fudan chakra. The next day, Naruto had to say the stuff he saw on the ninjutsu book about Fudan ninjutsu, and safe to say, he was really cursing himself right now. So much information kept hidden from him, and only now did he choose to take a moment of his life to actually read. It was only after the nurse that checked on him came here to discharge him from the hospital that he took his clothes and left straight to a training ground where he could train and incorporate everything he learned through reading during his stay in the hospital. After all, Naruto didn't want to waste any more time than he already did. He now knew that in order for a shinobi to grow strong, he or she had to have the strength and will to never give up and always fight through numerous obstacles that appear through life. Immediately after arriving in one of Konoha's many fields designated specifically for ninjas to train, Naruto went to one of the taijutsu logs on the field and began to beat the hell of it by going through the katas that he learned from the book. Although he knew his form was still far from perfection, he also knew that taijutsu required practice, so it wouldn't be possible for him to just read a book and immediately know how to do it. Nevertheless, he continued to beat the log in hopes of getting it right. After a while, he looked at his dirty hands and a few wounds from beating a log repeatedly and remembered when Lee was fighting Sasuke right at the beginning of the Chunin exams. Closing his hands once again, forming fists, he looked once again the log and began once again, the katas this time, adding some kicks as well. This time, however, Naruto found he was better than before, and he realized that Lee was right. Only through harsh training can the ninja evolve. Stepping away from the log for a bit, Naruto began the katas on pure air, like he was in a showdown of martial arts. It wasn't as painful, and Naruto could see that the speed of his movements was increasing periodically. It was only after 2 hours that he sat on the ground and looked up as the sunlight obscured his viewing for an instant. It went without saying that Naruto felt better than ever before. He felt like he already improved a little bit, and now his taijutsu wouldn't be considered street fighting, like Kakashi mentioned before. Getting up once more, Naruto changed the subject and went to ninjutsu. The 3 jutsus he saw in the book were, in theory, easy to do, but just like taijutsu, one couldn't hope to master something just by reading it in a book. Picking one shuriken, he threw towards the log. Naruto made the hand seals necessary for Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. However, when approximately 4 shurikens should have appeared, only 2 did instead, and none of them had the same properties as the original one. Such a result was expected since Naruto took close to an hour to master the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. This new technique didn't waste as much chakra the shadow clone, but it did require a considerate amount. Taking another one, he tried again, only for the same thing to happen. No matter, though, he would be able to learn it just like he was able to do the Kage Bunshin. It took him 10 tries to be able to master the technique. In the last one, he was able to create close to 10 clones of the shuriken, and all of them pierced the log in multiple locations, thus completing the technique, but not without its price, though, as Naruto felt on the ground from slight fatigue. It didn't matter, though, he did it just like he would complete the other two as well. However, his stomach growled, hence why he grabbed some shurikens that was stick on the log and went to Ichiraku's for some lunch. Of course, he changed about the way he saw things, but that doesn't mean his taste for food changed. After sitting down on the bench, Naruto asked for some miso ramen, to which old man Tuki greeted him and went to make his bowl. As the noodles were being prepared, Tuki asked about Naruto's training with one of the Sanins and congratulated the boy on the opportunity. Naruto appreciated and said that he would be stronger and don't waste more time than he already wasted for petty reasons. Tuki was confused at first, but waved it off, seeing it was Naruto and Naruto was impossible to understand. After paying the old man, Naruto said to take care since he wouldn't come back for a while, to which Tuki smiled and wished the blonde a safe trip. Upon returning to the training ground, Naruto remembered the needed hand seals for the Gyorai Shin no Jutsu, torpedo needles jutsu, and also the theory behind the technique. According to the book, the ninja must mold his chakra towards creating tons of thin layer shapes and then throwing it at the enemy. Of course, the book made it as easy as a simple henge, but the blonde knew better that chakra manipulation was a Chunin level material. Nevertheless, he was committed to doing all three of the techniques before Jiraiya could come to pick him up, so he immediately got to work. Little did he know, though, that a few people were looking for the missing blonde. At the hospital. Jiraiya, Tsunade and Kakashi were standing in what used to be Naruto's room, only to find it was empty. Naruto's clothes was gone too, except for his orange jacket, which was tossed on the ground near the window, thus showing them the obvious: the boy escaped the hospital and now they have to find him. Tsunade was furious at the head nurse for discharging the blonde, even after she made it clear that only she or Shizune were authorized for such a thing. Well, Jiraiya, I guess you have to find your student out there. You and him are scheduled to leave tomorrow morning, so take your time, said Tsunade before leaving the hospital room, thus leaving Jiraiya and Kakashi inside. Where do you think he is right now, Kakashi? Asked Jiraiya, actually a little concerned with the blonde, since he didn't expect the damn imbecile to run off seconds after being released from the hospital. Kakashi, for his part, was reading his book and didn't pay attention to what the pervert was saying, earning a vein popping from the Sanin's forehead, who in turn sighed and shunshined out of the room. Seconds after, Kakashi lowered the book and activated his Sharingan to see if Naruto left a trail of chakra to follow. True to Kakashi's wonder, looking at the window, Kakashi's Sharingan spotted Naruto's chakra as he jumped through the rooftops, heading to what appeared like a training ground a couple miles north. Smiling at the boy for pumping chakra to his legs and increases his speed, Kakashi started following the path Naruto took. He somehow knew that the blonde wouldn't take long before practicing what he learned, and he began to wonder if perhaps, he should have done this a long time ago. If Naruto was already able to do one of the techniques on the book and settle for the right taijutsu stance, Kakashi would have been wrong about the blonde. Truth be told, the Chunin always presumed Naruto would quit being a ninja, since he didn't have what it takes. However, as the time passed and Naruto was able to do stuff that no one would think it was possible. Learning the 3 steps to the Rasengan in little more than a month was outstanding, to say the least. The Yondaime Hokage took 3 years to create it, and Jiraiya, one of the Sannin, took 4 months to learn. It was amazing that Naruto reduced the timing to only a month. Kakashi remembered seeing at the book he selected for Naruto regarding ninjutsu, and he remembered that apart from the elemental ones, they were three jutsus that Kakashi would have wanted to teach Naruto, since it really matched Naruto's unpredictability attacks. Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shuriken Shadow Clone, Bunshin Daibakua, Clone Explosion Jutsu, and Gyorai Shin Torpedo Needle. They were tough to master, but once he manages, he would be able to add three very powerful and very handy jutsus to his arsenal, not to mention the Fuden techniques he would be learning with Jiraiya on his travel. After the last rooftop, Kakashi saw the blonde and also managed to see that he was doing the Tatsu Dragon Seal, which was the last one needed for the Gyorai Shin, before Kakashi's eyes widened out of proportions. After Naruto finished the hand seal sequence, tons of chakra needles formed around him, before Naruto moved his hands towards the Hitsuji Ram seal and shooting the needles forward the log, thus making tons of tiny holes which would kill any enemy easily. Kakashi wondered how much time Naruto was training, since the hour of his hospital release was 3 hours ago. Kakashi couldn't figure out how Naruto already learned this jutsu in 3 hours and thought about it for a while. How could someone, with no good history at the academy, learn advanced jutsus so easily? Would it be because he got the chakra capacity of a Chunin? No, Jiraiya already taught him the water walking exercise, so it couldn't be high chakra capacity. It was another thing, definitely was. Kakashi wondered if Naruto was a genius in disguise, but then again, he shouldn't be surprised at yet another surprising feat from Naruto. After completing the technique, Naruto kneeled on the ground from extreme chakra usage for the day. He cursed not having enough chakra to complete the third technique, but thought again since the Bunshin Daibakua required a lot of chakra at disposal and Naruto now didn't have enough. He figured that some rest would do the trick and his chakra would come back, so he just went to a tree nearby and sit down near it while admiring his work so far. His taijutsu was coming along nicely and he just added 2 new jutsus for him to rely on while fighting. The last technique, though, was what Naruto wanted to master the most for the simple reason of using it as a trap. Summoning a lot of Kage Bunshins and place some of the exploding ones in the middle so that when the enemy begins hitting them one by one, eventually he would be hitting the exploding one and would be sent flying because of it. Back to Kakashi. He was looking down at Naruto since the blonde happened to pick the same tree he was hiding in order to rest up a bit. At first, Kakashi considered just falling to the ground and greeting his student. However, for some reason, he hesitated. He didn't want to meet those same eyes he saw at the hospital. Kakashi just didn't have the words to talk to him right now. After all, it was him the one who taught Sasuke the Chidori, who in turn used it to pierce Naruto's flesh, thus almost killing the blonde if the Kyuubi wasn't inside him. The Chunin considered saying he regretted doing what he did, but he had a gut feeling that Naruto would close up once more and say, "It was alright," with dejected eyes. 1 hour later, Naruto got up and felt that his chakra was beginning to fill him up, albeit slowly, so he decided to train more taijutsu. So, he initiated the katas as he beat up all the imaginary opponents in the air. Meanwhile, Kakashi was watching intently and also managing to see some nice punches going on down there, before seeing Naruto alternating between punches and kicks. Seeing the blonde training hard sent an unknown wave of pride to Kakashi that never before happened. When he trained Sasuke for a whole month, not one did the Uchiha cause that to Kakashi, but Naruto, in less than a day, made Kakashi realize how deeply he messed up with the team. Suddenly, someone instantly appeared behind Kakashi, but he knew it wasn't Jiraiya since his visible eye caught sight of green. "Good afternoon, my fellow rival. How about we took advantage of this beautiful day and test our abilities to the extreme?" "Yosh!" screamed Guy, before Kakashi placed his hand on Guy's mouth in time for Naruto to just look up, since he thought he heard someone screaming. After Kakashi signaled for Guy to be quiet, he looked down and saw that Naruto waved it off and returned to his taijutsu training. Maida Guy turned to see what his rival was observing only to smile and give his thumbs up to Kakashi. "Oi Kakashi, Naruto sure is filled with the fire of youth, he and Student Lee are the same, smiled Guy as he saw Naruto's punches and kicks connect to the log repeatedly. Kakashi for his part thought about teasing the green Chunin, but he couldn't fault but agree with his old friend. So, unlike any other precedent, Kakashi smiled and nodded. The green beast was astonished with the normal reply and wondered what was wrong with his once-hip rival. However, before he could answer, Kakashi filled in the blanks. Naruto has a keen sense of never giving up and he will use that to become stronger. He doesn't need me as his sensei for that, mumbled Kakashi. Guy, for his part, understood what happened. He heard about what happened from his student Neji and thought about how unyouthful the Uchiha was for trying to kill his teammate with the technique Kakashi taught him. Did he learn that stance all by himself? Kakashi asked Guy, clearly concerned for his rival's supposed lack of teaching skills. However, to his relief, Kakashi nodded his head in the negative and explained that he selected some books for Naruto to read while he was recuperating in the hospital, but Kakashi already knew where his rival wanted to go. I know what you're trying to do, Guy, and I thank you for that, but all I ever did was show him the books to read. He was the one who draw the conclusions and you can see now how good he is on his own, whispered Kakashi, to which Guy nodded and looked at Naruto once again, who in turn was using both his fists to pound the log mercilessly, and he remembered his student Lee doing the exact same thing. You know what, Kakashi? I think you should go there and train him. He'll be with Jiraiya for a long time and maybe, you can at least help him with one technique. Well, I'm off to run some laps around Konoha. Yosh, screamed Guy before vanishing and leaving Kakashi alone to watch Naruto. He thought about what Guy said and wondered if really Naruto would be resentful to him now wanting to be a sensei to him. It's not that Naruto ever showed resentment at the Chunin, so what was he thinking that the blonde would blame him? Sighing in dismay, Kakashi vanished a few meters away, so that he could approach the blonde, by walking casually. In Tsunade's office. After trying to search for a little while, Jiraiya was called by Tsunade and now both of them began talking. The pervert explained about what he would be training Naruto in and how he would be power up his spirit and resolve enough to combat the Kyuubi within his stomach. Tsunade nodded, but still was reluctant to let the blonde go. She didn't see the need to leave the village for training all that much, but Jiraiya was insistent, saying that the Akatsuki would come for him when he's vulnerable, hence why they need to stay on constant move. Tsunade also expressed her concerns about the blonde being too far behind his peers in terms of rank and that maybe, he could go after the next Chunin exams. Tsunade, that kid has potential to come back as Chunin level, you know that. With his chakra potential and a few powerful techniques, there is no way he wouldn't be able to do the Chunin exams once we come back. He is already fixing some minor issues that need to be fixed, it's just a matter of time until we'll begin elemental manipulation. I can tell you, for sure, that he is going to become as good as his father was, if not better. He learned the Rasengan in only a month, that's got to be saying something, explained Jiraiya, to which Tsunade sighed and zipped some tea. Okay, he can go. But if I hear that you neglected him training for doing perverted activities, I'll make sure to beat you all the way to Iowa, do you understand? Threatened Tsunade, earning a nod, a gulp from the pervert. Now, you're not going to search for him? Asked the Hokage, looking at some scrolls, before seeing the pervert shrugging his shoulders, saying that when the blonde was ready, he would appear to him, earning a nod from Tsunade. With Naruto . Back with Naruto, he was just finishing beating the log mercilessly when he heard steps coming his way. He didn't want it to be Jiraiya since he wanted to finish the 3 techniques before leaving, but it was already nighttime and still one was left. The sound of the steps was increasing, until the figure finally revealed himself as Kakashi, smiling. Hey Naruto, what are you up to? Asked the silver-haired Chunin. Naruto for his part smiled at seeing the man and said that he was practicing the taijutsu and 3 jutsus he learned from the book. The moon was already up the sky and Kakashi was just watching Naruto pummel the log once more, until he came to a halt and looked to his beaded hands. He already had the chakra necessary to attempt the last jutsu, so he stopped and summoned one shadow clone, before Kakashi stopped him. Naruto, I think I know what technique you're trying to do, but with the clone so close, you could get caught in the explosion. Send him a couple steps further and pump as much chakra as you can in one go. That's the secret of the Daibakua, taught Kakashi, to which Naruto nodded and looked as the clone began walking a few steps before stopping and looking to the real one, who in turn focused on the ram seal and immediately molded as much chakra as possible in one go. The clone was suddenly enveloped in a big explosion, thus completing the technique. Of course, Naruto's explosion wasn't as big as Itachi was, but it would certainly cause damage to the enemy. Kakashi smiled upon seeing that Naruto already managed to master 2 of the jutsus that he set for the blonde. Not to mention that the Genin's taijutsu was now up to low Chunin level. Looking back at Naruto, Kakashi saw that he was smiling, but the smile was different. This smile was a satisfied one that someone wears it upon being able to overcome an obstacle, after failing a few times before. Upon asking, though, Naruto said that for a long time, he thought he was doing fine as a shinobi, but now he saw that he was just being delusional about his abilities. Listen Naruto, seeing as you'll be gone for a long time, how about I buy you some ramen, invited Kakashi, earning a nod from Naruto. Some minutes later, teacher and student each took a sit at the ramen stand and placed their respective orders. As they waited, Kakashi asked about how it was to travel and train with the Sannin. Naruto thought about it for a while, but in the end, he didn't have much to say, other than the fact that the man would only teach him one time and leave him to practice. Naruto told him about the 3 stages of the Rasengan and how it was, initially, weird to practice with water balloons and rubber balls. I just hope that this time, he won't be focusing so much on peeping at girls all the time, complained Naruto, to which Kakashi smiled and nodded, before seeing their orders being placed in front of them. They ate the meal quietly while savoring the delicious noodles. For a while, no one talked, no one opened their mouth to speak, only to eat. When that was finished, Kakashi extended his dish so that the old man Tsuki could pick up, before turning and addressing Naruto. Naruto, I'd like to say I'm sorry to you, said Kakashi, coming forward with the subject, earning a much surprised look from his student, who in turn asked about what he was sorry about. Ever since Team 7 was formed, I didn't give the proper attention I should have done to the team, you specially. At the Chunin exams, I ended up training someone who didn't need help and left you under the care of Ebisu. At the hospital, when you asked me about your flaws, I felt ashamed, simply because as your Junin sensei, I shouldn't be the one listing them, but rather working with you towards correcting them. I know that I wasn't the best sensei, and for that I seriously apologize, whispered Kakashi that last part, before Naruto began looking at his sensei, wondering what this all about. Was this guilt? Was this guilt for the Uchiha doing what he did? Naruto didn't forget that Sasuke tried to kill him with the technique Kakashi taught him, so it was really guilt over what he did, and Kakashi felt responsible for what happened. Sensei, you don't need to apologize. No one could have known that Sasuke would eventually flee for power. Also, about my so-called flaws, what good is the sensei when the student doesn't understand what needs to be done? Those books you picked up for me helped understand what needed to be changed in my abilities, and for that I thank you. Now, not only I improved my taijutsu, but also just added 3 jutsus to use out there, thanks to you, once more, explained Naruto, but Kakashi was still looking down, when suddenly, he remembered hearing Naruto saying that he added 3 jutsus. Naruto, you were able to master the 3 jutsus? Asked Kakashi, incredulously, before Naruto nodded and finished up the last string of noodles. How many can you multiple the shurikens? Asked Kakashi once again. I managed 10 clones the last time, though with more chakra, the numbers can double, explained Naruto, earning a nod from Kakashi and a thought that maybe, Naruto was a genius in hiding. Furthermore, Kakashi asked some more questions about the techniques and the taijutsu, to which Naruto responded, before the blonde said his goodbyes since he was supposed to be packing his things for the trip tomorrow. Kakashi eyed the blonde leaving and wondered how much better Naruto would be if Kakashi found out earlier about the blonde's quick learning. When he turned to walk away, he stopped for a while, before addressing the shadow to simply come out and talk to him. "Ah, Kakashi, I didn't want to intrude in student-teacher conversation, but Tsunade-sama wants to talk to you immediately," said the shadow, before leaving. Once Kakashi arrived, Tsunade asked about Naruto's whereabouts. Kakashi said that he went to his apartment after training the whole day. According to Kakashi, Naruto managed to improve his taijutsu form and also the 3 jutsus that the book contained, aside from the elemental ones. Jiraiya was there as well, so you could imagine his surprise upon seeing that the blonde was also training ninjutsu. After hearing Kakashi's statement, Tsunade nodded and took a scroll next to her. "Kakashi, tomorrow you'll part along with Genma and Raida to a mission near Suna." The Kazekage asked for help in pursuing a missing nin who managed to infiltrate the village, kill some of their ninjas and steal some important documents. "Sabaku no Tamari will be joining your group to arrest the man and retrieve the documents. Be ready to leave at 10 a.m. tomorrow," ordered Tsunade, earning a nod from Kakashi before vanishing. Inside Naruto's place. After already packing everything that he needed for the trip, plus some extra money to purchase some new clothing, Naruto was now just taking one last look at his place, before going to sleep. As to his clothes, he remembered some people saying ill about his clothes choice because they didn't offer him the necessary stealth that a ninja must have. So, Naruto made a mental note that the second he spots a place that sells ninja clothing, he would enter the place and change everything. Upon lying on the bed, Naruto noticed the kunai he leaves right next to him, in case someone decides to break in, and remembered that one last exercise was a due. The chakra control exercise was something he despised entirely. The tree walking one was, easily, the most unnerving one he ever had to do. After all, who in their sane consciousness would want to fall on their head so many times? Of course, Naruto didn't need to fall on his head, simply because upon failing, he could simply flip his body and fall safely on his feet. The water walking one was, also, a pain in the. Naruto remembered that he kept falling on that hot water so many times, he didn't know he was wet from the water or he was sweating from the heat. Now, this third one could shape to be just as troublesome as the 2 other, if not more. Maybe, Naruto would use more chakra and send the kunai flying directly at him. Just as he took the kunai, he thought better and returned it to the proper place. His chakra system took a heavy blow today and he wanted nothing more than simply sleep for a while. It wasn't long until his mind started playing tricks on him, which meant that, just like every night he fell asleep, he was having a nightmare. Usually, it was just memories of people looking at him with disdain and anger, nothing that he couldn't handle in time, thus didn't bother his sleep. However, this one was different, or at least started out differently. He was inside a dark room, where inside he couldn't say a thing except for a bed that was illuminated. As he walked closer, he noticed that a boy closer to his age was there sleeping with his face looking up. Upon approaching, the person's identity was plainly visible to Naruto. The cursed seal on his neck was glowing with intensity, but instead of reaching Sasuke to see if he was alright, Naruto just stood there impassively. Suddenly, Orochimaru appeared next to Sasuke and extended 2 white snakes around Sasuke's body slowly, taking possession of his body. Orochimaru stopped for a while and watched Naruto to see if he would do something to stop the snake face, but Naruto just remained there stoically, watching as Orochimaru managed to complete his possession of the Sharingan, before transforming into a monster and began his havoc and mayhem. Suddenly, in front of Naruto, appeared Sasuke once again looking at him, demanding answers about why Naruto let Orochimaru take over his body. The answer, though, was an easy one to make. Clearly you didn't expect me to help you after you tried to kill me, didn't you, traitor? Asked Naruto before seeing Sasuke's spirit leaving, while looking at the blonde's eyes, without uttering a single word in response. After Sasuke was gone, Naruto turned to look at Orochimaru, who in turn was looking at him while laughing evilly, before preparing a Rasengan in his right hand and charged Orochimaru before slamming the Rasengan right between his eyes. The next scene was Naruto's room as he opened his eyes to administer what he just pictured inside his mind. He just saw Orochimaru completing his ambition before Naruto was able to land a Rasengan between his eyes. What the dream mean? Of course, Naruto didn't care much for Sasuke, but he wouldn't let Orochimaru do what he intends to do, simply because he is an enemy of the village and therefore, cannot let him live. So, maybe the dream was what the future could entail in case Orochimaru manages to take possession of Sasuke's Sharingan. Closing his eyes once more, he fell asleep with those thoughts in mind and only one conclusion. He would protect the village even if it costs his life to do so. A few hours after leaving the village, Jiraiya and Naruto were found walking casually towards a small village in order to have some lunch and talk for a while. Suffice to say, Jiraiya wanted to talk with Naruto not only because he wanted to create a suitable schedule for the blonde's training, but also in order to find out as much as possible about the eternal enigma that was Uzumaki Naruto. In their last trip, Jiraiya was practically begging for Naruto to stop screaming from time to time, but now the blonde didn't matter a single word since they left Konoha. Naruto, for his part, chose the quiet time and began to wonder about things a little bit. He often wondered about his life and how it could turn up if he had the decency to apply himself on being a better ninja. Of course, he felt stronger and more capable now, but Naruto couldn't help but think about what would happen if he was better trained. Surely, he would do better in missions and maybe overcome the Uchiha in battle because of it. Naruto was not stupid enough to realize that he just learned 3 advanced jutsus in only a day, therefore it was safe to say he could be already proficient in Fuden ninjutsu by now. I surely messed up with my training, no matter though, I'll have 3 years to make up for the lost time and hopefully become strong enough to be of aid to the village, thought Naruto as he looked up only to see that they were approaching a small village. Naruto, why don't we stop here for some lunch? I bet you're hungry, offered Jiraiya, earning a nod from Naruto, who appreciated the offer and said that his feet was already hurting from that much walk. Jiraiya couldn't help but laugh upon eyeing his new student's determination. Another aspect of Jiraiya's concern was towards Naruto maybe becoming respectful for a change. He did insist for the blonde to address him with respect, however a part of him wanted to be called Ero Sennin. A few moments later, Naruto and Jiraiya were having some sushi and Jiraiya chose that moment to talk to the blonde. Oi Naruto, as you know, we'll have 3 years to spend on your training and I expect that in the end of this 3 years, your level would be somewhat close to Chunin, said Jiraiya, earning a look in surprise from Naruto, who thought he heard that Jiraiya wanted him to be close to Kakashi's level upon returning. That's right kid, you are already close to Chunin material and as I remembered carefully, you did beat that Neji kid, who was considered the genius of the Hyuga clan and you saved Konoha from the one-tailed beast Shukaku. Now, stop interrupting me and let's get down to business, stated Jiraiya, to which Naruto rolled his eyes away, before eyeing the pervert once more. Based on the material I've gathered on your file, your taijutsu is now, after you left the hospital, more refined, so it is considered low-level Chunin, however we'll sure improve this area. Genjutsu, I'm sorry to say your ability is practically none. However I'm sure that learning Genjutsu wouldn't suit your fighting style, so we'll focus on learning to interpret the illusion and how to dispel them effectively. Chakra control won't be much of an issue here in our training, since you already completed the tree and water walking, explained Jiraiya, but Naruto stopped him for a second. What about the kunai lifting exercise? I saw that this is the 3rd level of chakra control, asked Naruto, earning a thinking pose from Jiraiya. The kunai lifting exercise, although completely useful, wasn't obligatory for a ninja to complete. This exercise was only completed by those of the Hyuga clan in order to learn the Jiyuken and for medical ninja to be able to learn their techniques. This exercise required a steady flow of chakra to be expelled from the ninja's hands, thus keeping the kunai hovering around. Although it's nice to be able to Naruto, truth is, it isn't a necessary skill to have, especially for someone more suited for taijutsu and ninjutsu such as yourself. If you truly wish to learn, we'll leave it for the end of our training, also if you wish you could attempt on one of our free times. Moving on, ninjutsu and chakra capacity. The latter is rather easy to train since you only need to use a lot of chakra and then wait for your reserves to be fulfilled again. Now ninjutsu, said Jiraiya, before seeing Naruto smile, which in turn caused him to smile in return. As you know, ninjutsu are mostly divided between shape and element manipulation with a few exceptions that doesn't rely on them. You already is proficient in shape manipulation from the Rasengan and the Gyorai Shin no Jutsu, Torpedo Needles Jutsu, however we are still due to perfect your Rasengan. Also, we'll be focusing on your Fudan element. I happen to know the formula necessary to be able to use Fudan chakra and also some techniques that will be easy to teach. I happen to have a friend in Suna that happens to be a Chunin. He will teach you 2 to 3 advanced Fudan techniques, but the rest will be up to you, explained Jiraiya. Also, it will be up to you to figure out our schedule, he. You'll have to come up with a suitable timetable that will incorporate all of the subjects we talked so far. After hearing that, Naruto was rather angry to say the least. Jiraiya was supposed to be the teacher and yet he was stuck with fixing the training schedule. It was ridiculous. Jiraiya explained that such abilities are vital in the ninja world and would help Naruto greatly while going on more advanced missions or even leading a team. After paying for the meal, Jiraiya left Naruto at the local library in order to think of the schedule, while he would do some researching. Naruto didn't complain, but he knew of the damn pervert's reasons for leaving and wondered if the damn pervert would do this more often in the future. Looking at the blank page for a moment, Naruto decided to settle down everything he needed to place at the schedule and listed down. After finishing it, he proceeded to think. The old Naruto would settle for 3 whole years of bad ninjutsu and cool moves, but now after what he saw in those books, the blonde realized that he needed to pay attention to his other skills. 3 years and 3 abilities to focus on: taijutsu, genjutsu and ninjutsu. Also, ninjutsu would be divided into 3 phases: using the Rasengan with one hand, learning Fudan chakra and learning Fudan techniques. Taijutsu and genjutsu didn't need a full year, Naruto wondered. Of course, he could learn more advanced stances in probably 6 months and then do some occasional spars with Jiraiya. Also genjutsu disrupting wouldn't require much time to learn, so maybe he could assert both taijutsu and genjutsu within a full year of training. Well, I guess we could focus on these 2 arts as well as doing some chakra control exercises, thought Naruto as he began scribbling on the paper, the following. First year, 6 months of taijutsu and chakra control exercises, extended periods of running on top of water and maybe even doing occasional spars to increase the pace. Naruto really wanted to learn some new ninjutsu, but then the ones he already knew could need some time mastering it. The Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shuriken Shadow Clone, was one of them, and Naruto always wanted to see a suitable number of Shuriken clones to be created for the technique to be effective. Also, the Gyorai Shin no Jutsu, Torpedo Needles Jutsu, could need some work refining its shape and also increasing the number of needles, so he could use the first year perfecting them on his spare time from training. The Bunshin Daibakua clone explosion only needed more chakra burst, so Naruto didn't need to train that. Scribbling this information, Naruto now initiated the second year schedule. Since he would have practically done with taijutsu and genjutsu, he could focus 2 years with ninjutsu. Sometime in the past, he heard someone telling that he was a ninjutsu type of ninja, because of his unlimited chakra capacity. So, with the proper control and the advanced techniques, he was sure to learn. Naruto was practically drooling in anticipation. Nevertheless, He needed, before learning any other jutsu, to use the Rasengan in one hand, so he settled for 3 months exclusively for the Rasengan. After that, Jiraiya would be teaching him how to have access to Fuden chakra. However, Naruto was clueless as to how much time it would be required to do this. The part of the book didn't say much about it, so he settled for taking the rest of the year for such a feat. After all, in case he manages to learn before the end of the second year, maybe he could focus on other abilities. Looking at the paper, he turned to scribble once more. Second year, 3 first months Rasengan training in order to be able to create it single-handedly, without the clone's assistance, and 9 months of Fuden chakra manifestation training. In case I manage to do it in lesser time, we can focus on learning 1 or 2 Fuden techniques and spar on top of the water, using both taijutsu and ninjutsu. Objective: fighting experience and mastery of jutsus in the heat of battle. Of course, the third year would be focused on Fuden techniques that Naruto would be learning from both Jiraiya and a man in Suna. So, he scribbled the last year and turned to read it once more in order to see if he didn't miss anything. Naruto was actually satisfied with his schedule. Truth be told, the schedule was a good idea, since it would keep not only him in place but also for his perverted sensei. Leaving the paper on top of the table for a moment, Naruto began to look around a bit. This wasn't a shinobi library, hence why he couldn't pick anything that would interest him. However, they did have some adventure books to read and Naruto knew he would have to wait a while for Jiraiya to arrive. Upon arriving at the respective section, he glanced at the titles and was surprised to see that some of the books involved the shinobi world, even if all of them are fiction. He took a few ranging from Kiri Shinobi's war against pirates to an adventure between 2 powerful warriors in Iwa battling for the Tsushikage position. After picking them, he went to the table he was seating earlier and placed the books on top of the table. Picking the first book, which was actually the one that described Kiri's war against the pirate organization, he opened and started reading. With Jiraiya . After leaving Naruto alone at the library, Jiraiya decided to run into an old friend of his that happened to leave at the village. Actually, the reason Jiraiya stopped by was because this man contacted him a while ago because of some sensitive information about Suna. Jiraiya had informants up there, but couldn't just dismiss information like that, especially because this man wasn't limited to sensitive information and could easily tell more. After a while of walking, he reached a normal 2-story white house and knocked on the door. It took some minutes before the door opened, although just a little for the man inside to see who was knocking. "You appear like him, but how do I know you're really him?" asked the shadow, earning a snort from the perv. Really must every informant of his ask that question. True, it was shinobi protocol to be certain of the one in front of him, before opening his mouth. Before one became his informant, Jiraiya would say a secret password that only he could know. "Orochimaru is a pedophile," muttered Jiraiya, earning a nod from the man before he fully opened and greeted the white-haired Sannin. Clearly, Orochimaru has been given many names and curses, but only Jiraiya would call him like that. "Seriously, I'd think I earned your trust enough so that you shouldn't feel the need to have a double check," said Jiraiya, earning a snicker from the man. "Well, one couldn't help but keep a few vices, besides it's better to be assured than be stabbed in the back. Come in," gestured the man, to which Jiraiya muttered something unyouthful and then entered the house. The inner walls were rather simple, but what could anyone expect from a ninja's retirement home? Nakato Shinji was really an ordinary shinobi. Retiring early because of losing one of his arms while on a mission, he decided to leave the village and settle down in a village where he wouldn't hear the word ninja. However, just as the man said, Shinji became addicted to some of the vices that were exclusive for shinobi, hence why he agreed to be Jiraiya's informant. "So, I believe you have something to tell me, so let's hear it," said Jiraiya, earning a nod from Shinji, who began. "I have news of Suna. Apparently, they took Orochimaru's betrayal pretty heavily and are now restructuring everything. I heard from a Suna ninja that they have plans of formulating a mutual agreement with Konoha in order to exchange knowledge regarding genin training and the Academy of Shinobi wannabes. Also, there is a rumor of a nomination for the Godime Cage, although he couldn't confirm me the nominee's identity, explained Shinji, earning a nod in appreciation from the Sanin. Although it wasn't urgent news, Jiraiya was famous for knowing pretty much everything about everything. He knew of Suna's growing interest in allying once again with Konoha for the famous, mutual benefits. The news of the new Cage, though, was unexpected since because of the Yondaime Cage's death, the council took over everything until a next suitable shinobi becomes nominated for the Godime Cage. Jiraiya thanked the man for the information and gladly accepted some tea that Shinji, just now, made. Some occasional talk was exchanged between the two, and when Jiraiya looked at the time, he realized he abandoned Naruto at the library for close to 3 hours now. He explained to Shinji that he was in a hurry to meet someone and appreciated the hospitality. After leaving the house, he took a few minutes to arrive at the library, already wondering how much of a headache he will have from hearing Naruto screaming at him for abandonment. What he never expected, though, was to see Naruto, instead of either falling asleep or bitching to someone about late senseis, the blonde was there seated at the table reading a book, and Jiraiya could see 3 other books on top of the table as well. I don't know if I should be relieved that he won't scream at me or worried of seeing Uzumaki Naruto, the most hyperactive ninja of Konoha and Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko, expending pretty much half a day at the library, thought Jiraiya as he took the paper and turned to read it. First year, 6 months of taijutsu and chakra control exercises, extended periods of running on top of water, and maybe even doing occasional spars to increase the pace. Mastery of 2 ninjutsu learned before leaving, which are the following: Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu and Gyorai Shin no Jutsu, and the rest of the year will be spent on Genjutsu understanding plus how to disrupt the illusion. Second year, 3 first months Rasengan training in order to be able to create it single-handedly, without the clone's assistance, and 9 months of Fuden Chakra manifestation training. In case I manage to do it in lesser time, we can focus on learning 1 or 2 Fuden techniques and spar on top of the water, using both taijutsu and ninjutsu. Objective: fighting experience and mastery of jutsus in the heat of battle. Third year, mainly Fuden ninjutsu training with Jiraiya and a ninja from Suna, followed by full-out spar involving nin, tai and genjutsu 3 times a week, until the last 2 months, which will be used for eventual exercises that I couldn't master in time. Jiraiya couldn't help but smile upon reading it. There were some points missing, however he was still due to tell Naruto that on time, he would be set up against other opponents in order to have some battle experience. Still, the schedule layout worked fine, and Jiraiya found that the time given for all of them were spot on. Naruto for his part finished his book and looked at the pervert, displaying a large smile on his face. "I suppose that since you're smiling is because you approved my schedule?" asked Naruto, before earning a nod from his now sensei. "Indeed. I first thought you'd put 3 whole years of ninjutsu, but then I guess you are now a changed shinobi. The schedule is great and